Straw Hut Media.
Happy fall, Rewinders! Welcome to the 60th episode of Release Date Rewind. This show is now 3 years old this week, and wow, what a fast, fun 3 years it's been rewatching our favorite movies and TV shows for their milestone anniversaries. I'm your host, Mark J. Parker, a film lover, a filmmaker, and thank you for listening to this on the Straw Hut Media Network, wherever you get your podcasts, or watching it on YouTube. So we've talked about Macaulay Culkin films before on this show, and boy, do we have another good Macaulay one today. Yes, did you get that hint? Because we are celebrating 30 years of The Good Son, which was released in the US on September 24th, 1993, and showed us a dark and twisted side to the child megastar. We do spoil the twists and turns here, so if you haven't seen this movie or you need to rewatch, it's currently streaming on Hulu. All right, sons, daughters, and cousins, get your ice skates on because it's time to rewind. Everybody, I am so excited to have my friend, my old coworker. We were just talking some shit in a good way. Please welcome back my friend Tarik Flannagan. Hello, Tarik.
Hello, Mark. How are you?
I'm so good. Thank you so much for coming back. You know, you are my top person whenever our beloved early 90s thrillers are like hitting an anniversary. I'm always like, okay.
Who
right? I'm like, let me think of my Rolodex in my mind. I'm like, all right, well, Tarik's definitely up there. Does he like this one? He probably will. This is his speed. This is his style.
This is my wheelhouse for sure.
Oh, it really is. Last time was Single White Female, which was iconic. Yes. Before that, Hand That Rocks the Cradle. Now, everybody, The Good Son, which I don't know about you. I mean, when this came out, I wasn't like prime audience, of course. I was still a little too young, but at least seeing these lead actors who I knew, I mean, like as a kid, oh my God, are you kidding? A kid thriller? Like this was so cool for me. Now you were a little older. Was it still cool for you?
Excuse me?
Well, but barely. Only a few months. Only a few days.
Okay. Yeah, no, I don't remember. I was trying, as I was rewatching it the other day, I was trying to remember like the first time I saw it or when it first came out, and I don't really remember. So, but yeah, looking back on it now and just knowing what year this came out and the fact that Home Alone was just a few years before, it's like, wow, they went for it, you know.
Yes.
And which we can get into this a little bit more, but that's one of the things I think is so great is you pick this little boy from Home Alone, you know, the movie we all know and love, and you put him in this role, and it's like a different character. You know?
It's so different.
That's what makes it so exciting and fun.
Absolutely. And you're so right. The timing of it all, because I've talked about Home Alone on this show, not 1990, and then 91 was My Girl with Macaulay and Anna Schlumsky, right? Very family friendly. 92 last winter was Home Alone 2, and then now this. So I mean, Macaulay and his family, because his dad. Right, as we know, was crazy and not a well-liked guy.
Right.
His manager, boss, basically, right? Stealing his money. But he was just cranking Macaulay out, just like a machine, right? No wonder Macaulay kind of stopped doing stuff later on. This poor kid, big movies every single year.
Yeah, exactly. Right? It's a lot. And at that age, it's like, you know, yes. So, but that adds into the kind of the draw for me to this film is just...
absolutely. Oh yeah. It was genius casting, and I'll talk in a minute about how all these players came to be. But you might have seen this too, Tarik, when you were researching. I didn't realize, and it makes a lot of sense, but it kind of just changes my point of view on these great big movies of our youth. You know that. So Kit Culkin, I believe, is Macaulay's dad's name. He basically told Fox, Macaulay will do Home Alone 2 if he can do The Good Son, which it's like, whoa, you know, because they so badly wanted Macaulay now to, you know, stretch and do something different and do something dark, which I love. I mean, hey, love it. Love evil kids.
And that's the thing. Like, I did see that, and I kind of had mixed thoughts on it because it's like, hey, good for him for being a businessman and good for him for wanting his son to go in a different direction. So there's a part of me that's not mad at that, but I can understand at the same time how it's like, oh, well, that's a little bit gross. Like you're like dangling this in front of me if I do this other thing. So I get it, but I'm also like, okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Honestly, it's not all that different than a lot of other things. You hear behind the scenes stuff of like someone had this in their contract. They had to do this movie. So, I mean, that's been done all the time. But it's just so funny for this mega child star to have this mega franchise. Home Alone 2 was huge, obviously just like Home Alone 1, but like that this was on the back burner coming right up. It's just very interesting. Yeah.
The good son.
What do you think this is, a game?
Okay, well, let me set the scene, everybody. Let me show you, Tarik, what was going on at this time. I want to hear from you what you think of what was going on in pop culture, okay? We'll start with music.
Yes.
Dream Lover by Mariah Carey, the one and only Mariah. That was the #1 song. Were you jamming out to that at this time?
I think we all were, pretty much.
Yeah, right? I know. #1 song for a while there. She was a star. This is like that weird time in pop culture where like the late 80s and early 90s all kind of still looked alike. Everyone's, you know what I mean? There wasn't a major jump in looks just yet, and we'll talk about that more with this movie. But anyway, so Dream Lover by Mariah, top song.
Okay.
Right? Iconic. And then another song, also iconic, but again, I was shocked because this sounds older to me than Dream Lover. I Do Anything for Love, But I Won't Do That by Meatloaf. That had just released earlier in September 93. I'm like, that to me feels like 10 years older.
Exactly. And that's Meatloaf wasn't really in my, that wasn't my thing.
You weren't jamming out to Meatloaf.
85 or 95. Or
right. You're like, oh yeah, that guy, that Meatloaf guy.
Who's that?
Yeah, that old song, right? So I Do Anything was also a new big song. And then I thought this was also funny. Melissa Etheridge had just released her second album in September featuring the big song, I'm the Only One.
I'm the only one.
Exactly.
Yes.
I was hoping you were going to sing that.
Talking to some friends about Melissa Etheridge yesterday. So I love this full circle moment we're having.
I love that. You're having a Melissa weekend. I love that. Yeah, I mean, iconic song.
Meanwhile, I can only name like 2 songs of hers.
Oh, right. Yeah. I mean, we probably know more, but we maybe don't know the titles or, and I don't want to get any hate, but some Melissa Etheridge songs they kind of sound similar. You're like, oh yeah, like that's just kind of the same one, right? But also, fun fact, since obviously you're a fellow theater lover, I feel like I'm the Only One is a song that is in so many like jukebox musicals now. It was in Mystic Pizza that we did at Agunku Playhouse. I feel like in the Cruel Intentions musical, like any new recent musical kind of having like 90s popular songs, I'm the Only One is in it. So the rights must be very cheap or affordable or something.
Right. Inexpensive.
Right, inexpensive. Yeah. Sorry, Melissa. Yes. So I thought that was fun. Okay, now on the TV side, wow. I am excited to hear what you think. TV, of course, late September, because this movie came out September 24th, 1993. So TV in late September at this time. Every show was starting. Brand new shows were starting. So let me tell you what was going on. Okay, on this same day, Friday, September 24th, Boy Meets World. Were you into Boy Meets World at all?
Not really.
Yeah.
Like I know it, but I didn't tune in every week. But no, it's a thing.
That was like a big thing on like TGIF, ABC. That had premiered its first episode. Now on to more highbrow shows. The X-Files. Did you ever check out The X-Files?
Jeff, you probably already know. I don't think that's sci-fi and all that is not really my thing.
I know what you mean. I'm not surprised Jeff was into it.
Of course he loved it. Yeah.
Of course he can quote every episode probably. Absolutely. He's like, that's when Jillian says this.
Exactly.
It's funny. And maybe because I was too young, I feel like it was up my alley, but I know what you mean. Sci-fi, once things get a little too sci-fi, I'm like, okay, we're getting a little too into the lore and the jargon, and I'm
not
like,
my thing, but people love that show.
But of course, iconic, right? Memorable show. The X-Files had just premiered Lois and Clark with
Terry Hatcher.
Terry Hatcher, that had just started. NYPD Blue, a big show, had just premiered. And Frasier. With Kelsey Grammer, Frasier, of course, everyone.
Now the reboot is coming back.
How funny. So funny you bring that up because just yesterday, you were talking about Melissa. Just yesterday, I was watching the trailer for the Frasier reboot.
Love it.
So we were having a 90s flashback weekend.
I love it.
Now, did you watch Frasier?
I have seen 0 minutes of Frasier.
And honestly, I've
And one of
maybe
my best
seen.
friends loves that show, and I'm like, I don't know. I know he's a doctor. I don't know he was in Seattle,
Right.
and that's about the extent of my knowledge of
Yeah,
Frasier.
you're like, I know it's Kelsey Grammer and David Hyde Pierce, and it's
Right,
very brown. They're in a lot of
right,
brown
exactly,
offices.
exactly. But
Yeah,
that's
if you've seen 0 minutes, I've maybe seen a total of maybe 2 minutes.
okay.
I know people love it.
Right.
There's something about it that I always was like, oh yeah, that like old white man show
Yeah.
where everyone sort of talks quickly, and I guess it's supposed to be funny,
Right.
you know. But
Yeah.
yeah, so the reboot's coming out soon, so we'll see what that's like. I feel like many of these TV reboots don't last very long,
Right. Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we'll see how long that lasts, because this is the first one in a while now with all these streamers. I feel like the last few were on the major networks,
Right.
which
Right.
we know the major networks are all kind of a
Oh,
mess, and you got to be a hit like right out of the gate. So
exactly.
we'll see. Interesting. But so
Yeah.
yeah, Frasier had just started.
Okay.
The final season. Now we're swapping a little bit. We're switching to the final season of In Living Color,
Wow.
long running comedy show that had just started. So this was going to be its last year, and I
Okay.
didn't realize. I guess the Wayans brothers were not involved in the last season. So maybe that's
yes, that was like a major thing because they obviously created and were so
yes.
that show became so popular, and then the last season or two it kind of took a
Kind of fizzled.
little bit of a turn, which
Right.
is yeah. But I'm a Jeopardy watcher,
Oh
and
yes.
there was a whole category on I think it was like after In Living Color, so it was like questions about people who were on the show and went on to other things. So there was like, this person starred in a movie. It ended up being like Jim Carrey was one of the answers, and Jennifer Lopez.
Lopez,
And,
yep.
Anyway, random little tidbit about.
Oh yeah, major celebs came out of that show. Iconic show, big deal.
Yeah,
But
huge.
yeah, I guess when the Wayans exited, just one more season left, and then it fizzled, right? And then lastly, on the TV side, on the talk show side, which Tarik and I have worked on various talk shows over the years, Ricky Lake had just started airing.
I was thinking it was going to be Ricky.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah. Now, were you a Ricky watcher?
I was a Ricky watcher. Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I would hope so.
Yeah,
I mean, it's hard not
yeah.
to be. Even if you weren't a daily watcher, I mean, I honestly feel like her show was one of the talk shows. Like when you think of talk shows, right?
Yeah, it was like the thing. It was you were watching. Everyone was watching.
Right? It was that weird fine line of like total trash, but also she got like some good guests and like she, because she had her career as well. So yeah, Ricky Lake had just started, which I just thought was so fun to talk to you about. And then Late Night with Conan O'Brien had just started and took over for David Letterman. So he was now on the rise.
Yes.
And I thought this was funny since we know many talk shows do not last more than 6 weeks. Well, there was a very short-lived 6-week Chevy Chase talk show, which I didn't even know.
Okay.
Yeah, that had started September '93, and I guess by Halloween it was taken off the air.
Oh
yeah,
my gosh.
so even the big ones, even the big stars, can always have a success with talk shows.
That's too bad.
Yeah, and then lastly, some other popular movies that were right around this time: The Fugitive, Striking
love that
Distance. Right, The Fugitive was big. And I forgot The Fugitive was also like major Oscar noms. Like not only was that a big commercial action drama with Harrison Ford and Tommy Lee Jones, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but then also it was nominated for almost everything. So that was a
great
big deal in theaters for a while, right? Striking Distance with Bruce Willis, another action thriller. That one I could be I don't know that one as well either, but I could be wrong. I think Sarah Jessica Parker might be in it with him, I think.
Okay.
But so that was high up on the box office at this time, top 5. And then The Age of Innocence, Martin Scorsese, that was Michelle Pfeiffer, Winona, and I think Daniel Day-Lewis, period piece.
Yep.
So that was another big awards one. And fun fact, this came out the same day as a very different movie, Dazed and Confused, which I admit I still have not seen like the full movie. Or if I have, it's been many, many years. Have you seen that one?
Never seen it.
Yeah,
that's one of those that people are like, what? You've never seen? I've just never seen that movie.
Yeah, it has like such a cult following.
Yes, right.
But I mean, yeah, if you're not into it, that just passed you by. You know what I mean? So maybe someday I'll watch the full thing. I know that one also has a lot of young stars before they really made it big.
Yes.
But anyway, so in comes The Good Son. Tarik, in your own words, pitch me. I'm the studio exec. All right, you're coming in. We have a meeting. You need to pitch me. What is The Good Son? What's it about?
All right. So The Good Son. Here's what we have. So yeah, no, The Good Son is about a young man who his mother passed away. So his father is kind of struggling to take care of him. He has to go out of town on a business trip. So he decides to drive his son across the country to stay with his brother, the boy's uncle, and their family, which includes two kids around the same age as this young boy.
Yep.
And the second the dad leaves town, the crazy begins. Like immediate crazy. And yeah, it's two boys kind of exploring the wilderness and hanging out at the home, not being supervised enough apparently by their parents, and they're getting into all sorts of mischief, and it turns real bad.
It gets real mischievous. I mean, shit. We'll be right back.
Henry, come on down here.
Behind his smile lies a secret.
Here, made two of them, so we could be brothers. Hey, Mark, come on, let's go. Where are we going?
This was my first rewatch in quite a while, and I remembered so much of it because so much of this movie is so memorable. I mean, some of these visuals, I have to say the camera work, and I meant to look up the cinematographer, but some of the shots are so great, especially when we're on the cliff. I mean, the camera is making you dizzy. I mean, the look is really, really good, I have to say. But the music, I had forgotten or never realized the score by, I want to say their name, hold on, Elmer Bernstein's score. I have to say, Tarik, has not lasted the test of time for me.
I would agree with you on that.
Yeah? Were you able to rewatch, and were you feeling like this score is so family? I felt like, was this taken from My Girl? It is so sweet, so family friendly, so sad and somber. And I'm like, but where's like the beat? Where's like the darkness? Yeah. You know? And it comes up every now and then, but that to me is what ages the movie. I mean, of course, the fashion and the look, but I think if we had a little bit more of an eerie score, or just a little different, I think it would have kept this movie still feeling fresh. But that dates it for me. Yeah,
agreed. And I also feel like that kind of plays with the pacing as well. Like, it's funny because when I first sat down to rewatch it the other night, I was like, like an hour and 26 minutes or something. I'm like, perfect. This is my kind of movie. Like, let's get in, let's get out.
Love it.
But I feel like, so I do love that. But I feel like at times we almost moved a little bit too quickly. Like, and that's just storytelling, but also I think a little bit had to do with the score as well. Like, I feel like they could have made some slightly different choices that would have kind of slowed things down and made things a little bit even more suspenseful or dramatic or eerie or, So yeah, I agree with that thought.
I totally hear you, and I totally agree. I love the runtime. When I pulled it up on Hulu, I was like, not even 90 minutes. Thank you. With credits, I'm like, okay, an hour 20. Yeah. And it's fast, and I agree. At times, I'm like, actually, I would have loved this to breathe a bit, because once things get dark, it's just like rapid fire, which half of me totally appreciates, but the other half, I'm like, can we then have a moment maybe in the middle of all that chaos where actually Macaulay, why can't I think of his name? Henry, right? Where actually Henry does something really good. And now it's like, well, wait a minute. Maybe he's not always so, you know what I mean?
Right. And I thought the same thing. Like, I maybe spend a little bit less time on the front end. Like, the mom was in the hospital bed, and then the dad was talking to his brother about bringing the boy to the, like, let's just start with the funeral. Like, let's just start there. Like,
I agree. I think that is genius. Like, we don't really need the mom
side, whatever that story. Did that even mean anything later on? Like, we don't need that.
And you know what's funny? I even wrote down, I should have pulled up my notes earlier. I even wrote down Elijah Wood's line, which, by the way, Elijah Wood, what a beautiful, still good looking, he's kind of quirky, but what a beautiful boy. I mean, beautiful hair, the eyes. I mean, what a great actor. But I even wrote,
and also, when we were talking about timing and Home Alone, and he had just been, I don't know if you've seen, please tell me you've seen Radio Flyer.
Tarik, I'm going to cry. I love that you're bringing that up. I almost talked about that on the show, but it's such a deep cut, and it's heavy that I'm like, do I talk about that? I love that you love it. Yes. Radio Flyer.
I love that movie.
It's so good. I'm so glad you love it too, because not enough people know
my
or
God.
talk about it. Right?
I love that movie.
Him and
the
little
fact that he had just come from
Joseph Mazzello as his brother, the boy from Jurassic Park.
Yes.
Great
Yes.
kids. Yeah.
Oh,
And Lorraine
God.
Bracco. Oh, Tarik. Oh my God. Yes.
It's so good.
Love it. But anyway.
And Tom Hanks narrating the whole thing. Come on.
My God,
What more could you ask for?
I forgot it was Tom Hanks.
Yep.
Okay. Later today, I'm rewatching that. Great. Let's do it. But no, going back to Mark with his mom dying, I'm like, yeah, do we really need to see her die? A picture will do it justice. That's what we did for Richard, played by another Culkin.
Right.
All we see is just like a picture of the boy, which we'll get into that. That's super, super spooky.
Yes.
But I wrote down how Elijah Wood says, "You're not going to die, Mom, because I won't let you." Smash cut to her funeral. I'm like, ooh, geez. At least maybe like, can we like do a little montage and maybe she's alive for a couple more days and but I'm
or
like,
just take it out altogether.
Yeah, or just
what does that even
yeah.
mean? Like, I don't understand what they were going for there. Like,
yeah, I agree. I think maybe a better movie, or at least a movie done now, just start with that funeral. Start with the picture of Mom.
Right.
We see Elijah in his little suit. We see family, and we just hear through conversations.
And immediately we hear Dad say, I'm driving you to Maine. I still have a problem with this whole driving across the country to Maine. But.
I know. I'm like, okay, all the way to Maine. And let's talk about it real quick. So Uncle wants Dad to bring Mark to Maine for 2 weeks for winter break. I'm like, winter break for 2 weeks? I guess maybe that's the thing. When I was a kid, I mean, winter break was just 1 week. I think.
1 week, right.
And it was between Christmas and New Year's, and I see no holiday decorations. So I'm like, what is this winter break, kids? What school do you go to? Anyway, but it's also not for Dad to grieve. It's for Dad to go away.
Business trip.
Yeah, to do business so that he will never have to leave Mark again.
Yes.
And I'm like, well, wait, how often does Dad leave Mark? We don't really know much about this. Is Dad like sort of there sometimes and gone most of the time? And then even their goodbye in Maine when, he's like, this is the last time I'm going to leave you. I'm like, well, wait, it's just a 2-week trip. You're not really leaving here.
Exactly.
Very heavy dialogue when I'm like, okay, I would think, is Mark used to you going on business trips? Because then he would be a very different kid. He'd be like, all right, thanks.
Yes,
Yeah.
Right,
so I think that needed just a little bit more dialogue to maybe flesh out what's going on. Right. But yeah, I even wrote in my notes, road trip, which is such a sad road trip. Oh my God. Right. A grieving family.
But it made me miss my Game Boy. I will say that. He was like playing his Game Boy. I'm like, I miss my Game Boy.
I know. And I love that whole theme of kids in a movie not looking around at their surroundings. They're playing on their phones or their games or their laptops. It'll never go away. Like, I feel like this movie was probably one of the first to like show that like, meanwhile you're like surrounded by these beautiful red rocks, but you just want to play Game Boy, right? And we don't even really know where they live. I saw that this movie in the credits, and I looked up, it didn't shoot in Maine. It takes place in Maine, but it's shot in Massachusetts. Okay. It's shot in Minnesota randomly. That's where the cliff stuff is, in Minnesota. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And then apparently, I guess the early stuff is in Las Vegas, I guess, away from the strip. Right. Because I'm like, where are these red rocks? Is it like Nevada? Is it Salt Lake?
Arizona, right. Interesting. Yeah.
So random. So you would think they would play up a little bit more, maybe as Mark and Henry are bonding, like, I'm not used to all this cold, all this snow. Right. I'm from like the desert.
But again, why do we need that? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, but you bring up a good point. Yeah, either trim that even more and get the movie down to an hour and 15 minutes.
Or like spend more time. Like you can take that time and put it into more, drama later on.
Yes, exactly. And I feel like as Elijah Wood is meeting more of the family and reintroducing himself, because even mom, Wendy Crewson, Susan, she's like, it's been 10 years. I mean, like the kids, what, 11? So you have so you have not met.
So you don't know this boy, okay?
Yeah. But like even tell her like I really miss the mountains. I don't know. Like you could take the beginning and disperse it through the rest of the movie to have more meaningful conversations. Yes.
Agreed.
Anyway, I agree. Yep. But so real quick, before we talk even more, let me just fill you in and feel free to chime in, Tarik, just about how this movie was made, where everyone was in their careers. We already talked about, obviously, Macaulay Culkin was a major bankable A-list star at only maybe 12 or so at this time.
Right.
So it started with novelist Ian McEwan, who I believe is British. He had written some, thriller novels, I guess, and was asked by 20th Century Fox to write a script about evil, maybe focusing on kids. And this was in the 80s. And so he was quoted saying the idea was to make a low budget but high class, highbrow movie, not something that Fox would naturally make a lot of money on, but maybe get some critical clout. Right? But so he writes the script, and this is like mid 80s, because I'll tell you in a little bit, different people were attached throughout the 80s. And then Fox actually passed on it. They realized, this is not really bankable at all. It's not really going to be a commercial success. So they passed on it for a while, not until Home Alone 1, Home Alone 2 was a thing. Then they were like, okay, let's look back at the good stuff.
Let's revisit this.
Yes, right? So in 1988, an actor named Michael Klesick, I don't know who he is, but he was originally cast as Henry.
Okay.
But then the film was put on hold, lack of funding, lack of interest. And of course, that role we know went to Macaulay Culkin. Mary Steenburgen, which I could totally see.
Absolutely.
Right? Did you see this too? She was originally cast as Susan, right? I could totally see it, but because Home Alone 2 obviously was the priority and The Good Son was pushed back one more year, Mary wasn't available, so then they went to Wendy Crewson, who I have to say, I think Wendy is awesome in this movie. What do you think of her?
Oh, no, she's great. Yeah. Oh, no, she's.
I think she is. She looks good. I have to tell you, I had forgotten, and it's so funny because I remembered, like, even as a kid, I'm like, ooh, I love her jacket. But her black coat with the collar popped and the white turtleneck, I think that's going to be my Halloween costume. I love that look. It's such a like good kind of like mom meets final girl. Like she can run. It's not too baggy. She can hold on to the kids. She can do some fighting. But it's also sensible for winter in Maine. I mean, I was into that look. Anyway, I digress. But so that's Wendy Crewson. She had done lots of TV, a couple movies, but she was the backup choice, and so she got the role. And how funny, Jesse Bradford, who I talked about 1 year ago on the show in Swim Fan in his Speedo.
Yep.
Young Jesse Bradford had then replaced Henry. So that would have been interesting to see him take on a villain role. But again, with time and things changed, and he apparently also grew too old for the part. He just started looking too old because he was a little bit older. Because I know in a few years after he was in like Romeo and Juliet with Leo as his buddy. So yeah, it wouldn't have worked. But so like we were talking about Kit Culkin, he got Macaulay involved and was really, he even got the director involved, I read. Maybe you saw that too. He was vetting directors. He was vetting different people. It's like a big handprint in this movie. And so he brings on Joseph Ruben, who you must love because he's directed Sleeping with the Enemy.
Come on.
Which I know I missed that 30th anniversary, but when that comes up again,
35. We'll be
I'll
here
let you know.
35.
I'll give you a little tap.
Yes.
Sleeping with the Enemy and The Stepfather, which I still have not seen, 80s horror movie, which led to a sequel and maybe even a few sequels. Yeah. So he definitely had some good thriller horror cred.
Nice.
And then, it's interesting because even though the writer Ian McEwan had written this script and was constantly being asked by Kit Culkin and different people to rewrite it and change it to this and change it to that, I guess Joseph Ruben brought on his frequent collaborator David Lowery, who was commissioned to rewrite the script. And so that, it's always interesting, especially with the writers' strike happening right now. Always interesting when then there's writer feuds and there was drama between them. But David did not get writing credit. It's still stuck with Ian. Okay. But I guess a lot of the script is actually David's. So
interesting.
Yeah. Interesting.
And when you hear things like that, I'm always so curious to know, like, what were those changes? What would it have looked like without,
Yeah, would we have gotten some breathing room? Would we have? Yeah, totally. Because
so interesting.
Yeah, it's just interesting. It's cold in Maine, and we don't really have a lot of fish out of water stuff, like we were saying, that you typically maybe would have just had, and that doesn't need to take up much time. That could just be like, as the kids are walking around, like, geez, I'm going to need a heavier coat. Like, I'm not used to this. I miss home.
Right.
That kind of stuff. Yeah.
Behind his eyes lies a plan.
Who is he? Mr. Highway. Wow. What are you going to do with him?
And behind the image of a good son.
Coming?
So what are you guys up to out there?
Sorry, Mom. Top secret.
The scene that pops into my mind first And there are several, but I think the one that really I'm like, oh, because it was so well shot and so suspenseful and dramatic was when Henry was ice skating with, is it Connie? Connie, right?
Connie. Yep.
And he is like whipping her around that rink.
Oh my
and
God.
I'm like, oh my gosh, what is going to happen? And it was shot so well.
Yes.
And you're like, he is going to hurt her. Like, this is
yeah.
it for Connie. Like, Connie's going to be done.
Oh,
And it's just like they just kept going around.
the
And
circle,
you had
the
shots
shot.
of the skates. Yes.
Yes, the close-ups on their skates. I know that. I'm like, oh my God, it's gonna happen. I know it's gonna happen,
Right.
but when is it gonna
And
happen?
then you see like the caution, because of course there's caution tape on the ice rink, where they're not supposed to be. But so I just love that. I mean, obviously it's scary and
oh yeah, and Elijah's running. I did think it was funny that Mark knows where the ice skating pond is for only being there maybe a week or so. I was like,
a lot
I'd be
happened
like,
in those 2 weeks.
and I do love how everything is walkable or runnable from this house on the water. I mean, it's a sick house, but like I feel like how Henry just randomly shows up later after the ice skating incident at the hospital to try to kill Connie, but Mom is there to stop him, and how she doesn't even ask like, how'd you get here? She's just like, oh, Henry.
Like, oh, hey, you're here.
I thought you were home with Dad. Oh no, I wanted to come check on Connie. Aw, it's like, well, how'd you get here? Like,
yeah, exactly. Right.
It's like nighttime, But so yeah, Elijah's able to run and find the ice skating rink, and yes, Tarik, it is so memorable, and Connie is so cute. Also, she's a real Culkin as well.
Yes.
It was a Culkin affair, right? And the way he throws her, and the falling into the water, and the scariest thing of all is how he's just laying there.
Yes.
Right, with his hand, and how he's not reaching, he's just putting it out. And there are moments where she even touches it, and he kind of like raises it.
Yep.
But I wrote in my notes, where the hell are the adults? Why is everyone just standing there? Yep. Instead, one adult's holding Elijah Wood. I'm like,
holding him back. Like, no. How about somebody goes and helps this girl?
Right. Finally, they come. Once she's gasped for air about 7 times, they're like, okay, now let's go.
Let's do something.
Right?
Yes.
Oh my God. And then they're breaking the glass and they get her out, and she's so limp. I actually thought the first time I watched this, I thought she died.
Same. Yeah.
Right.
Same. Yeah. Yeah.
And even before that, one thing that's great about the script and about that kind of subplot of going after Connie, the hide and seek in the house, in the dark, going after Connie, those little moments really are good pacing to show us that we know
what we're leading up to. Yep.
Right? That he could do this, Yeah, I do kind of wish we get it later in the film, and I kind of wish there was one moment earlier in the film where Mark is sort of told like, oh, you're overreacting. No, like from the parents, like maybe after the dog, which that was another scene where I'm like, okay, why is the dog chasing them? And we're spending so much time. We're spending like a full minute with this random dog.
Right.
But I forgot it comes back.
Right.
That homemade. Oh my God. It's actually so grisly when you think about it. A homemade like bolt shooter gun. And then I forgot with the well, they're dragging this bloody bag. Like,
yes, I forgot about that part too.
Yes, and I do appreciate that they start off with the dog, because I mean, everyone knows when you kill a dog, I mean, that is just so bleak.
Right.
And we know that's like a key sign of a serial killer. So for that to kind of be the first major thing, I mean, right away, it's like, ignore the score. This is pretty serious.
Yes, right. And what I did love about that scene with the dog is even before he killed him, the dog is chasing them. They get to the point where they're able to close that gate or fence thing. And Macaulay barks back at the dog. So there's this shot of the dog barking and him barking. And I love that moment, because that's one of the first moments in the movie you're like, oh, he's crazy. Like, this little boy has problems,
Yeah, he even says the line, I love that dog. And I'm like, what? Love to kill it.
Right.
That whole bit, the ice skating bit, can we talk about Mr. Highway? Oh my God.
Highway, yes. Yeah.
Right. Oh my God, Tarik. That is, I mean, first of all, the whole mask thing, which another little brief moment I would have loved if we could change time a bit. I would have loved to have seen Henry make those weird masks, because, he's introduced to us wearing this mask, which is spooky. And I remember seeing old photos of Macaulay, so that was kind of part of the promotion, but doesn't play a major role in the movie like I thought maybe it could have. Right. But we meet him, they both are wearing the masks, and then when he says, I want to show you something. They go to his shed, and he spins around Mr. Highway wearing that same creepy face.
So creepy.
Wow, that was truly shocking to me. Now, I can't remember exactly when I first saw this movie. I didn't see it in theaters. I'm sure we rented it or watched it on HBO or something. My eyes, my jaw were dropped as they're putting that fake body
up
on that overpass, right?
Overpass, yes.
And again, great shots because then the camera like kind of goes above Mr. Highway to see the road. And then we even get a shot, car's point of view of what's going on up there. And then all those cars, I think the reporter says a 10-car pileup.
Right.
And we are right there close on the impacts, on the crashes, on the that like trailer thing, like just immediately.
Like RV or something. Yeah.
Oh my God, Tarik.
It's so
and the reaction shots on the kids. I mean, that right there is the good son, right? Like Elijah is horrified and Macaulay has this sick, subtle smile. Oh.
We're here.
Lies the terrifying truth.
Say goodbye. You know what you did? You could have killed people. I feel sorry for you. You just don't know how to have fun. What?
It's so funny because I'm remembering, I'm listening to you talking about, them putting the thing up on the overpass. And I'm like, okay, so they're supposed to be 11-ish.
I would think so, right? 10 to 12. Yeah.
I'm a father of a 7-year-old. And I'm like, in 3 years, in 4 years, am I going to be letting my daughter run through the woods all day, go to the ice skating rink by herself with her younger sibling? Like all these things, I'm like, what age? And I'm trying to remember back to when I started hanging out with friends and hiking through the woods.
Right.
I don't know. Like, I'm like,
I know.
Where was I guess my point is, where was this boy's parents?
I know.
Like,
and like,
what were they doing?
We don't know what Susan does for work. She's kind of always home, if I remember correctly.
Right.
So,
and we see Dad like once.
Well, I know. I actually think we needed to see Dad more. We see him more a little bit later, with that another great, very visceral scene where Elijah's got the knife.
Scissors.
Or the scissors, on, and how Macaulay, oh my God, I'll never forget, like as a kid, seeing Macaulay say, push harder so the blood will spurt across the room. I'm like, this is so sick. But, we see Dad get involved a little bit more, but I was surprised. Dad really is very much a side character for being the reason why Mark comes here in the first place.
Right.
You would think there'd be a standalone scene. I know Henry sees and doesn't like when Mark is getting close to Mom, because Mark is sort of like at that one scene where he's almost kind of dreaming, hallucinating, thinking Susan is his mom, but obviously she's not, right? So, but I thought we were going to see like a Dad... What's his name? Wallace. A Wallace-Mark scene earlier in the film.
We needed it.
Yeah, I think we do needed it. And I think we needed a bit more fighting between Wallace and Susan. There's hints of it. Obviously, they're grieving Richard.
Right.
But I think Wallace needed to be like, actually still a little upset that like, Susan, you were there. Like, how did he drown? And Susan, wait, how are these kids running around? You're home. I think there needed to be a little bit more tension between them,
Agreed.
But I hear you. And I thought of your kids when watching this movie. I thought of Avery. Well, because also Avery looks way older in pictures than 7. Like she is 7 going on 10. So I'm like, oh my God, like what if there's a reboot and it's 2 girls this time?
Exactly.
And it's Avery and
I don't know. I'm just like I do remember Susan at one point, the mom at one point does ask, what are you guys getting into or something? Like I think she asked them and they kind of brush it off.
Yeah.
But I'm like, no, within this 2-week span, you've killed a dog. You've done a lot of things that should not happen in a short amount of time and with some parental supervision that should have been happening.
And even like the added line of like, well, stay in the neighborhood, okay? Like that would go far. She's just like, okay, and they are literally painting the town red, literally. And it's just it's interesting because when I was around that age, we would be out and about, of course, but we stayed in the neighborhood. And luckily we had like big woods in our like a big field and lots of trails. So I mean, we would end up in other parts of town, but we never went far from those trails to go back home. And we were up to no good. We weren't killing anyone or thing, no way. But yeah, I just feel like I can't imagine us like hanging out on an overpass. Like
Right.
these kids are really, and like throwing the rocks at the
Oh,
glass.
yes,
I even
yes.
wrote my notes. Okay, even if it looks abandoned, kids, too much.
Mm-hmm.
This is not your property.
No,
you know?
exactly. Yes.
So yeah, I agree with you. It's a little crazy how parents were so absent, but maybe that's also one good thing about that is it kind of keeps that mystery of Richard's death going.
Right.
And I think that could have been maybe a little bit talked about a little bit more, maybe of like how did Richard really die? Of course, we kind of know right off the bat. Like I'm sure Macaulay had something to do with it, right?
Right.
But just like yeah, like are you just like a vacant kind of absent parent? Like showing more of that throughout the movie, I think could have just helped with that mystery.
Totally. Totally. But then when we get a little bit more information, the rubber ducky, that whole.
Oh my God. Chills to this day. That whole scene, again, I think Wendy Crewson, she is so good in that scene. She finally, it's like a little too late, goes to the shed.
Exactly. About
right?
time.
Yeah, about time that you're like checking out the shed that you own. This is your house. This is
You are
your
the
property.
adult.
Right? And when Henry comes in saying, Mom, what are you doing in here? I was gonna be like, hi, I pay the bills. This is my shed.
Exactly.
All right.
Right.
But when she finds that rubber ducky, I forget, how does she find a tree?
Yeah,
I know it's on the floor. I think, does it fall out of something?
I don't remember actually.
It's kind of quick. I actually feel like the rubber ducky needed to be talked about or shown in another picture a little more because it is sort of like we have to kind of use our brains a bit to be like,
put the pieces
that
together.
has to do with the bathtub,
Yeah.
But then also I feel like the reveal, the finding of it needed to be a little bit longer, right? A little bit more suspenseful.
Yes.
But when she finds it and then he's there, and I guess also just the lighting. I know it's daytime, but like it's dark in there, and they are having their standoff, and she is like, I've been looking for this, and you had it the whole time. And Macaulay's awesome. He is just so stoic, and like, he's so mad but hiding it.
Mm-hmm.
Tarik, that's a good scene.
Yeah, it's a really good scene. Yeah.
And then that leads to the big epic with capital EPIC.
Exactly.
Epic last act finale where she is there. He wants to go on a walk. Elijah knows that that's code for no, he's going to push you over.
Don't
go on the walk. I love when Mark breaks the glass, but then so quickly Dad, I mean, I wanted him to jump out of there, but Dad and Doctor got there very fast. I guess this town is very small. Right? Doctor, I forget her name, but like, you know, and the doctor's funny. She's needed. And I love when Henry is like, I'm worried about Mark. Like, oh, you bitch.
Yes, and he turns around because he's already sitting there.
He's already sitting there in this swivel chair, and he's like, I'm worried about him. He's not
his hair is like perfectly.
Yes. Yeah. Oh God. And it's also just really smart casting, even if it wasn't Macaulay. Of course, the blonde kid, this, because the whole, blonde, light, fair angel, that he's the very Village of the Damned, like, it's good.
Right.
Like,
very bad seed. Yes.
Very bad seed. Exactly. But, so Doctor's already there, but I love, when Mark he knows what's going on, and he breaks the glass and he still gets out. We have that cool overhead, kind of almost Psycho-esque shot Jeff would appreciate. Running out of the room, and then it seems like he falls like in real life on the porch. That shot when he slips.
Right. Yeah.
It's so kind of like chaotic that I'm like, I feel like that was real.
Like, is that real?
And so he's going after them on their walk, and again, more of a great showdown between them where I remember Susan like gets down on her knees, and is kind of like shaking Henry, like, did you kill Richard? And he says something like, what if I did? Or something like that.
Oh, right.
Something like that. And that's not a no.
No, exactly.
So like, and man, I want to play Susan. I want to find the script, and I just want to like,
just walk right out. Yeah.
What a moment there where then she's like, and then her voice breaks. She's like, like that is a yes, and she knows it, and he knows it.
So now what? Yes.
Oh my gosh! Again, like that whole sequence. Oh my God! Like, where were the Oscars? I know the critics did not like this movie.
We have to talk about that.
We'll talk about that in a minute. But and then he runs off, not because he's embarrassed or sad or hurt. No, he's running off to lead you to your death, Mom.
Exactly.
Meanwhile, where is Dad? Dad, like, you were right there. What, did you just stay home with the doctor? You're just making some coffee, some tea. We'll wait for the kids to come back.
Whatever.
Right? Susan must be somewhere. She goes to the cliff a lot to think, so she'll be back.
What if there was this boy, and he did these terrible things because he liked doing them? Such a sweet little thing. It'd be too bad if something were to happen to her. Would you say he was evil?
I don't believe in evil.
You should.
So then we get to the cliff. Let's talk about the moment of the movie. I mean, first of all, this location, I guess, was in Minnesota because even though there are various rocky ledges in New England, I guess for weeks, you might have seen this too. I guess for weeks, the location team just couldn't find like that perfect, ominous, like cliff, right? So I guess that is, in Minnesota, there's no ocean. So I guess that's like a big lake that's just kind of washing up ashore and they just like faked it for the ocean, of course.
Yeah.
So,
well, they nailed it because it's perfection.
They nailed it. I agree. And also they nailed it. And they just nailed this whole set piece because we see her there often because that is her sad place to think about Richard, think about what she could have done differently. It's also a very interesting whoa moment when Mark tries to tell her, Henry tried to kill Connie. I saw it with my own eyes, and she slaps him, and and then she just leaves him. She doesn't slap him and say, "Okay, let's go home." She's like, "You shut up," and then she walks off. She's like, "You can find your own way home.
You're
like,
not to get here. You're not to get home."
Okay, right? But so we've seen this place multiple times, and now this moment of peace for her, or hopeful peace, now is true, iconic, memorable chaos. Tell me, what do you think of that big showdown? This three-way fight. What do you think of it?
I mean, you're literally on the edge of your seat as they're on the edge of this cliff. You know, like we've seen this place before. Yeah. We know that it's a special place for her. So for it all to go down here makes absolute sense.
Yeah.
But you are like, someone's going off the edge. You know, someone's going off the edge. So you are waiting for it all to play out. You're waiting to see how's this going to end. Yeah. And they did a great job with building it up. And, he hits her first with the thing, right? Like,
yeah, he pushes her, which right off the bat, you kind of think, oh my God, like they kind of almost fake you out thinking, that
this is it.
He just lunges at her, which my palms are sweating already because like they do a really good job, I have to say, with like any harnesses, any of that, because it looks real. Like there is, from what I can tell, there is like no green screen. There ain't no CGI.
Right.
These actors and their stunt doubles are on this cliff. And I mean, there are rocks and like, I mean, I don't know how they pulled it off. It looks so good. And also, I always say this, I feel like that's also just like early 90s filmmaking. I feel like it was just gritty enough where like, with CGI today, it looks so smooth. It looks so good that you just know it's like a video game. Right. This, because it's, the technology wasn't completely there yet, it looks so real, right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
But yeah, he pushes her and she luckily is able to fall kind of in like a little crevice thing, right? And oh my God, and then she's climbing up. And I think also she's got that great Jamie Lee Curtis, not only that Jamie Lee Curtis look with the short hair, but those like whimpers, like the struggling, to add that to then the boys are rolling around fighting because Elijah's now there. He knows exactly where to find them. So then you're like, oh my God, is she going to climb up? Are they going to roll over? Huh. It's like the choreography, that must have taken days to shoot, right?
Right.
Days to just map out, to just like rehearse. And so then she gets up, and one of my favorite shots is she's like kind of like coming around the bend up on the top, and she puts her like chin on it, and you can see the waves just right there next to her. They're in the distance, but like, it just is such a stressful shot where it's like, pull yourself up because like you could easily fall.
You're almost there or it can go real bad. Right.
And she gets up on her feet just as the boys, are like starting to roll over. The editing as well. Iconic. I mean, it's just amazing. And so she now is leaning over. She's holding them both. What did you think was going to happen? Do you remember when you were first watching this? What did you think?
It's like you knew there had to be a decision. Oh. And it's like, what do you do?
Sophie's choice for the 90s.
Right, exactly. But it's like, that's your actual son, but you know what he's done versus your nephew.
Yeah.
It's.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point. Yeah, she made this choice she knows at least that Henry did something bad to Richard. She knows that Henry killed Richard now.
Right.
She doesn't have confirmation that Henry did all this other.
No,
Well,
exactly.
first of all, she doesn't know about the dog. She
No.
doesn't even.
She doesn't know about Mr. Highway.
She doesn't really know about Mr. She only knows what the aftermath on the news, but she doesn't
Right.
know, right? So she actually doesn't know a lot. She was not at the ice skating rink or ice skating pond. So yeah, like she's just sort of taking a big assumption that he did the rest and that Mark actually was telling the truth.
Right.
Yeah, I wonder if we kind of needed between the end and that slapping scene with Mark on the cliff, maybe one other moment of her alone or something, or seeing Mark like sitting by himself and like, okay, now he's distancing himself from Henry. I don't know. Like, I wonder
Yeah.
if we just needed that one more little kernel to move
Right,
forward
right.
because but then maybe I'm wrong, because I mean, part of the shock is she makes this choice and she makes it, like we said, with not a ton of info, right? And when oh my God, Elijah's slipping. She's just holding onto her thumb. Also, I'm kind of like, Elijah, use your other arm.
Right,
Use
like,
your
come
other
on.
hand.
Yeah. Right.
You know, which I mean, maybe because of this movie, like I just remember like, you know, playing in like at school or like on playgrounds around town or whatever, like doing the one-handed like
Exactly.
the next
Don't
time
let
you
go.
guys take the kids to a playground, can you please, Jeff can record you, can you just do, even if your feet are touching the ground, just show me the one-handed, because it was like such a like 90s emotional
Absolutely.
dramatic
We
thing.
will work on that.
But
We will work on that.
please, if you could make that, please, or if you want to film it and Jeff, whatever you're comfortable
Perfect.
with, okay?
All right. We'll make it happen.
But yeah, then and again, Henry is so stoic. Mom, I love you.
I
which
love
is
you.
Spooky,
Yes.
right? Very
I love you.
robotic.
He kept saying it, right? I love you, Mom.
Saying it, and it's almost like his evil brain is like, say this, because it's like he's possessed. It's like this is what you're supposed to say in these situations, right? And that shot of looking up at them, right, and how she lets go, and then it cuts to Macaulay screaming, and that was twisted. Like to see Home Alone boy,
Right.
Kevin McCallister.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. You know, and that's why even if the movie maybe isn't perfect, and I'm sure the making of it with Macaulay's dad and all this behind the scenes stuff, I'm sure there was lots of headaches, to be that ballsy, to take like America's sweetheart, make him evil, and see him basically crash onto those rocks, see that body.
Right.
Oof.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. It's.
And then the movie just ends.
Sorry.
Do we have a visitor?
Can you come say hi?
Who is it? I can't see. Oh, is it Alexander, the good son? Ooh. Hi, Alexander.
Hello.
How's it going? Your hair looks great. I love your
This
haircut.
is still bud hair. Okay. Okay, Baba. Go. What's Avery doing?
Oh, good to see you. We're almost done, I swear.
Bye.
Bye, Alexander. Great to see you.
You waving? Go ahead.
Bye.
See you later, bud.
Have fun.
Sorry.
Well, The Good Son,
The good
part
son,
2.
yeah. Right.
remake.
Exactly. But hopefully not crazy like that.
Yeah.
Good son.
No, he's the actually good one. He's
Yeah.
Elijah.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But yeah,
sorry.
then it just sort of ends, right? We see that shot of Macaulay's body on the cliffs in the blood. Wow, right? That's disturbing.
Yes.
And
yes.
then they're holding on to each other, and then it sort of mirrors that earlier shot, which is kind of random. And it's even kind of random at the end, where then we see the back of Elijah standing on the red rocks, you know. And then we have this weird, what do you make of the ending voiceover? Because we had no voiceover anywhere else, and I feel like it's kind of weird, right?
I don't even. What was it? I don't even remember.
He based it, and also it's kind of sad. He says something, I didn't write it down, but he says something along the lines of like, I think of Susan whenever I'm on the rock, so we can assume he goes back home with dad and does not go back to Maine ever again.
Right.
Does not stay in touch with the family or whatever. But he basically says, I sometimes wonder if Susan worries about making the right choice, which it's like, oh, well, that's bleak,
Yeah.
right? And then he says something about being like a mom, you know, like because he obviously he lost his mom and he sees his mom in Susan, which is also a little weird when he says earlier to Henry, you know, well, she's my mom now. Like my mom decided to come back in the form of your, like it gets a little weird there.
Right. Yes.
You know, but it's cute because I mean, it's the only thing he can like kind of hope for, but that causes more tension between them. And that's when Macaulay iconically says, "Hey, Mark, don't fuck with me."
So good.
So good.
So good.
Although I did notice, and maybe you did too, once Elijah's on the rope, Which that treehouse is treacherous. Like, Mom,
Yes. Right.
from the get-go, the first time we go up there, it
No.
needs to be condemned. This is not finished.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But then when Mark slides down the rope, I don't know if you caught this. I never caught this until this rewatch. Only his hands are on the rope. His feet are dangling. So I think it's obvious he's on a like a harness that they like digitally erased or whatever.
Right.
But I'm like, you got to wrap your feet around it and like, and also if you slid down that fast,
Your hands would be, yeah, right.
I don't know if he's wearing gloves, but like still that would maybe hurt.
That's funny.
So that was funny. But anyway, so it was something to do with like being a mom.
Okay.
I feel like no voiceover was really needed.
Right.
I think we needed something. I think to end with just Susan and Mark on the cliff hugging would almost feel too quick.
Yeah, we needed one more beat of something.
Right.
But I don't, yeah, the voiceover and the Red Rocks and like that's.
Yeah, maybe it just needed to fade to him and his dad on the Red Rocks sitting and hugging and talking. Like, maybe we don't even hear what they're, something like, okay, he's back where he should be.
And, yeah.
When innocence is just a mask.
Do you really think I'd hurt her? You wouldn't. Poor Mark. So violent.
When trust becomes a weapon, then anyone can become the next victim.
Henry. No! Susan!
Listeners, it's not just Tarik and me who love The Good Son. Here are cameos from my friends Jackie Renee, O.T. Garcia, and Josh Gorski, who co-hosts the Video Dropbox podcast.
The Good Son is a classic. If you've ever wondered what Kevin McCallister from Home Alone would be like with a severe chemical imbalance, you have The Good Son. For me, this is before The Bad Seed, so this is my first introduction to the evil kid genre. First time I saw this was in middle school at a sleepover. We rented this movie and Father's Day with Billy Crystal and Robin Williams, an interesting combo, I know. I remember being so stressed out that nobody was believing Elijah Wood and really shook that Macaulay Culkin was straight up murdering kids and animals and dropping F-bombs. He does Psycho surprisingly well. Oh, and I still stand by this. Wendy Crewson is the worst movie mom ever. How about less brooding on a cliff and more supervising your kids and not slapping your nephew whose mom just died? This was the perfect rewatch for fall, such a cozy atmosphere for a thriller with a New England winter, crackling fires and sweaters, a lovely dose of 90s nostalgia.
Hey Mark, I'm so excited you're talking about The Good Son on your show. It was one of my favorite movies as a kid. I don't know why really. I think it was nice to see Macaulay Culkin as like an evil villain, and I was in love with Elijah Wood. So maybe that's why I liked it so much. One of my favorite scenes is when Mark has like the thought that Henry's gonna poison the family. So he wakes up in the middle of the night and he starts like throwing all the food from the fridge in the garbage disposal, and he's just pounding it down with like that wooden spoon, I think, and just kind of crazy. I don't know why. He just totally takes ownership over the mom, and he just gets so protective, which I thought was pretty awesome, because he had just, I think, lost his mom. And then another scene, Mark says something kind of offensive to the mom, and she just like slaps him, and his face is just so like, his eyes get like big, and he's just so shocked. She just like hugs him afterwards. And then the last scene, when the mom gets pushed over the edge of the cliff and she falls.
Hey Mark, this is Josh from Video Dropbox Podcasts, and I wanted to send a quick message to say I'm so glad that you're covering 1993's The Good Son with Macaulay Culkin. Like a lot of families around this time, my parents ended up renting this at a Blockbuster or video store thinking it was a heartwarming Macaulay Culkin film, when in fact it is obviously so much more. And I am so glad that they did, because while it terrified all of us and probably disgusted my parents, I still appreciate and love this film to this day, and in fact consider it, in my opinion, a cult film that I wish more people knew about. I think it was about the time when Macaulay Culkin shoots a dog and then eventually tries to kill his sister and even drops the F-bomb that my parents were completely and utterly taken aback. But I love it for all these reasons, and I think that a lot of the scenes still hold up. The suspense is great. The score is great. Elijah Wood is great. And in fact, I love the button on the film where Susan the mother of Macaulay Culkin, basically has her own Susan's choice of having to decide who lives and dies. I just think for all these reasons, it's so great. So enjoy talking about the film, and I'm so glad you're covering it.
We just talked about the tree, and at one point Henry says, "If I let you go, do you think you could fly?" And it's just like,
yes, thank you. Yes, that's the first time we really get a spooky vibe. Yes.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And again, Elijah's so good. Just his look of like, what the hell?
Like, what are you talking about? Yeah.
If I let you go, you think you could fly?
Macaulay Culkin, the good son.
Yeah, and then later on, he talks about Henry talks about flying. I remember, he says something like, "Once you can fly, you're free," or vice versa. Once you're free, you can fly. And it's like, whoa, and that's also when they're getting more heated. And these boys, I really appreciate that they and the director, the camera team, I mean, like, they're like in each other's faces, and like it is a showdown. And how rare to see kids really deal with like some dark material, because even nowadays when like kids the lines aren't this serious.
Right
This really is like single white female almost, but just with kids, 10-year-olds.
Right. Yes.
So I mean, it's all very ballsy, and I appreciate it. I think it holds up. Do you feel like all these years later, does the film hold up for you?
I think it is. Like we talked about, obviously the score and a few things with that, but I feel like it's like I'm all for the story and the acting, and so I think it does. Like I still enjoyed it. Like I didn't finish that 1 hour and 26 minutes. Like, I still enjoyed it.
Yeah, and like you said, it flows. You're not really looking away. You're pretty much into it for the most part, Well, before we go, one quick fun fact that is not so fun at all, but I thought this was really interesting. So it came out in the US and Canada. It came out different countries, but it did not get a theatrical release in the UK because at the time, you might have seen this too, maybe if it popped up for you, two British boys right around this time and around this age, around 10 or so, killed a younger boy right as this was like starting to come out, and they were possibly inspired by another recent horror film, Child's Play 3. I guess there's a scene where a boy dies on train tracks. So they like killed this boy. It was all over the news then, and so The Good Son was canceled from releasing in the UK because this also was a time, as you might remember, where like, throughout the 90s, there was a lot of talk about violence in movies, inspiring in video games, now with Game Boy and all that, violence, inspiring violence in real life. So this was an early example of that debate, right? So that was pretty spooky.
Yeah.
So it didn't open there. I guess it came out later, on video and all that. But it opened at number 1. So this was a hit. It ended up making around 60 million, I guess, worldwide. So, having these kids that were prominent actors, really did pay off. Right? Yeah. And having Macaulay on that poster, I forget, the tagline was, "Evil has many faces," which I think works. I feel like it should have been more like, evil can come at any age or something. I don't know. Many faces, I'm like, there's just one face, and he's this cute little Macaulay Culkin, But he was front and center on that poster, right? And awards-wise, Elijah did win a Best Young Performer award at the Saturn Awards, and Macaulay was nominated for Best Villain at the MTV Movie Awards that year. But he lost. He lost to another really great villain, Alicia Silverstone in The Crush.
Ooh, okay.
She was acting quite a lot in that movie, so I could see her,
that's fair,
but
that's
I
fair.
mean, we got some good kid villains in 93. Wow.
But
So
the critics didn't love it overall.
Let's wrap up with the critics. So what do you make of that? I saw Roger and Ebert gave it 2 thumbs down. They said it was stupid, horrible,
Well, I think that was one of his quotes was one of the things that I looked at. He said, I think he used the word unpleasant. He called it unpleasant. And I'm like, is that because you don't want to see kids in this way?
Right.
Which that's what makes it so good. To me, that's what made it so good. It's like, you don't want to see kids this way, but that's why it's so like intense.
Also, and also that's what the trailer showed.
Right.
Like, that you're getting into that.
Point.
So it's hard to call something unpleasant. I agree. When I read that too, I was like, well, what? Like the movie itself or the feeling you feel? Because I think that's intended.
Exactly. Like that's Yeah. So I thought that was interesting. So yeah, I'm curious what I didn't see much more as far as like what the critics were really thinking and what they had to say.
Yeah.
But yeah, I saw that it just overall was not well received, that well received. It did well box office wise, but as far as critics goes, it didn't seem like it did that well.
Yeah, and I'm seeing that the cinema score given by the audience, they gave it a B, which is interesting because I don't know, you and I love it. I mean, I love this movie. I have a distinct memory of my dad like watching it with me, like, he loved it. So I'm like, well, what would have been an A? What if maybe if Macaulay lived and like evil, survived, but ooh, that almost would be too like horror movie, you know what I mean? It would be a little too bleak or something, right? But I did see that the New York Times, at least, I don't know if they gave it a full good review, but they did say the end sequence on the cliff is one of its few suspenseful and original moments and is quite literally gripping. So
I'll take it. Yeah.
And you'll love this, Tarik. Paul Willenstein of The Morning Call, whatever that is, described the film as Home Alone meets Misery meets The Hand That Rocks the Cradle.
There we go.
And
it all comes back to Hand That Rocks the Cradle.
Right? And that makes sense. I see it. And you know what? Sign me up. Sounds great.
Absolutely. That's like that sounds like a movie I want to watch.
Like every year, I need a new version of those three films all in one. Sounds great.
Exactly.
Right?
Oh, that's amazing.
Love it. Now, out of the three, my last question for you, and then I'm going to stop. Last question is, out of the three films we have talked about, Single White Female, Hand That Rocks the Cradle, and The Good Son, out of those three, if you were Susan on top of the cliff, if you had to save only one of those movies, if you had 3 arms, what would you pick?
I have to go with The Hand That Rocks the Cradle.
Wow.
That is just solid.
Love it. Wow. Oh my gosh, that's great. I love it.
Yeah.
I really don't know. They're all so good. I don't know what I would pick. I think I would lean more towards The Good Son or Single White Female. I don't know. But I love that you picked that one. Great. I love it. Yeah. So there you go. Now I'm going to Photoshop you with a third arm holding the posters for these movies.
Please.
Which one is he going to choose? Listen.
Please. Yes. I love it. I love it.
Help me.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to or watching this episode of Release Date Rewind. And please be careful of scary kids like Henry. Run the other way. Big thank you to my thriller-loving friend, Tarik Flannagan, for joining me on the show again, and little Alexander, too. And thank you, Jackie, OT, and Josh for the cameos. So great to hear your thoughts. Thank you, thank you. If you liked what you heard or watched, don't be afraid to leave a rating, a review, a thumbs up, or to recommend the show to your friends. Thanks also to Straw Hut Media, Greg Clements, and Kyle Motzinger. Follow me on Instagram at Release Date Rewind to see bonus content about this movie and to see updates about future episodes. Next time, we're talking about another September chiller, Urban Legend. Ooh, you gotta check the back seat.